If you're a struggling artist, you don't have to be a starving artist. And in today's video, I'll be explaining as to why. And I want to clear some myths of starving artists because that's all really just propaganda and marketing. And there's rare amounts of famous artists that were actually starving and in a bad financial situation. I will first speak about the era, like the beginning era of art, like in the Renaissance era, and then I'll talk about where the starving artist archetype came from and how in the modern days it's used to for marketing for artists to use to elevate their image to get support from people and patrons. So, what is a starving artist? A starving artist is an artist that's going through a tough time and they are struggling financially and basically in poverty levels. And this idea of a starving artist is heavily romanticized by Hollywood films and by social media, honestly, nowadays. And people often see that as a way to becoming a true artist. You have to suffer. You have to go through poverty. You have to come through a horrible background. And I'm here today to say that that's bogus. That's absurd. That you have to suffer in order to be great. And that's not the only way to become great. And everyone in this earth has gone through suffering. And I'm not saying that you should live an easy life. No, honestly, living a hard life makes for a great artist. But to purposely make yourself suffer, to purposely market yourself as you are suffering, and that being your image and byproduct for you to be getting recognition is ingenuous, in my opinion. There are many artists who genuinely are suffering and going through bad circumstances that sometimes it's hard for them to make art in their early days. So in the end of this video, I'll be also talking about my take on how an artist in today's age can use struggling as a fuel to their creativity, you see. But that will make sense in the end of the video. So, in the Renaissance era, there were not many famous artists that were struggling or starving. I will want to name a few artists that were starving and struggling during the Renaissance era. There's an artist called Caravaggio. He's from the Renaissance era, and he was known for his dramatic use of lights and shadows, and he had a difficult life. He was often in debt, lived recklessly, and got into frequent violent attractions. So this guy was, pretty delinquent. Despite his fame, he had periods of financial struggle, especially when he was forced to flee in Rome after committing murder. And that actually sounds pretty badass, not gonna lie. But that's an example of an actual artist starving and struggling. Most famous artists we see, they were not actually struggling, like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, maybe Picasso, I believe. But I'll speak more about when that idea started coming out. Another example of an artist that was actually struggling and starving in the Renaissance era was Paolo Uccello. And Uccello was an early master of perspective, but he was known for being obsessed with his work rather than securing financial stability. And this is an archetype of artist that is still within today's society. It's artists that just love their passion and they're very perfectionist into their work. And the thought of trying to have a stable financial life is a second thought because they are so obsessed with their passion and craft and so perfect. I'm not that archetype of an artist because I need food on the table, but I do also get those periods of working long hours and forgetting to eat and stuff like that. But that's just different archetypes of artists that I want to highlight. One more artist I want to say is Pontormo. And while not necessarily starving, Pontormo, a Mannerist painter, was reclusive and eccentric. He was known for having paranoid tendencies and lived a highly isolated life, which may have impacted his financial stability. Again, I would call this the introvert type artist who have probably a bad childhood and have paranoia tendencies and just don't like interacting with people. Those types of artists still exist today, and it's hard for them to enter the workforce or have a second job, but they find joy still in painting. This is a bit different than the obsessive archetype that I spoke about previously, but those artists sometimes do struggle financially because it's hard for them to interact with society because of their personality, so introvert. And a brief context about the Renaissance era was that most artists in that era, they were patronage. So a patron is someone who's going to sponsor your work, who's going to pay for you to make the work. So all you have to do in your life is just create art. That's all you do. And most artists nowadays want to be in that position where they're making art but still getting paid. And that kind of working style is not common nowadays because there's a different landscape. But in the Renaissance era, you had churches, you had priests, you had people in political power that hired artists to create a piece of work. And that's how most of them got their financial monetizations, creating works of art for the people and for the public. And they were paid by government officials to do that, or any local businessman. Nowadays, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. But luckily, for the internet age, we can sell our art online, and we often have to do the marketing ourselves. I will talk about now more the branding strategy that most artists have been using in the late 20th century, around 1980s, in that sort of time frame. There was an artist called, I want to pronounce his name correctly, I believe is Jean-Michel Basquiat. His early branding as a street artist, he lived near poverty, and that helped him get recognition and underground hit. But he quickly became a millionaire. Another artist, Banksy, he had a anonymity behind his persona, and he was seen as an outsider, but his status was carefully maintained, and his works also sold for millions, like those high-end art galleries in New York City. But and also social media creators nowadays are using the aesthetic of starving artists and posting about their financial hardships while strategically monetizing their brand. And this has been going on for the longest time, but I believe it's been occurring more, starting to occur a lot, about carefully branding your image to get sponsors or selling your artworks at a high price. Just need a sip. But there's also not only in the independent scene, but also in art schools. Like have art schools and MFA programs. They have students stand the notion that real artists don't make money, and whilst they are charging them high tuition costs. There's a strange dilemma of the starving artist, but the reality of many artists are actually well connected. Many artists in these industries are well connected. You know, if you know the right person, you can level up your career much faster and get recognition. But so this is my take, and I'm not going to read off my notes anymore. This is my take in all of this. We all suffer in the beginning in anything, you know. On anything, you first 2 years are hard. For one, you're learning your craft. Two, most likely you are young, and three, you don't have a lot of connections. In the early years, you are going to struggle. That's just known fact. But that you doesn't mean that you have to stay there. I want to say that I've been trying to be an artist, or trying to take art seriously for the past almost 2 years now. I have done art for the past 4 years, but it's been on and off, and I'm not counting that as serious attempts. I can't speak. I'm not counting that as serious years where I was trying to make it out as an artist. But for a harsh truth, is you have to essentially build your own brand to survive nowadays. You will want to document your career right now, like YouTube, Instagram. You want to post your art right now. You want to create a sort of persona of you as an artist. Of you have to think about how are you going to present yourself. It's the same way of how you're gonna illustrate your image. What do you want people to see? And I'm not saying that you should purposely create, portray yourself as a starving artist, like you're poor, not making enough money. But have to. People nowadays are looking for authenticity. So if you're documenting yourself right now, and then once you get more recognized, people are attractive to that. You may inspire also people, and art is your career. You want to make it a profession as well. Not speaking to the hobbyists who just do art a hobby. I'm speaking to the artists that wants to create art as their career, to do this for life. And if you just take it seriously of doing art for the next 2 to 3 years, of constantly trying to do artworks or whatever art you're trying to do, filmmaking doesn't matter, but you have to really document your art and do your art. That's all you have to focus on, and I believe you can go far. By doing that, you will have a career that you can live to make art. Nowadays, you will not get a patronage like in the Renaissance era, but you have to become independent. You have to do this almost all by yourself. That's what I'm doing right now. Like, I don't have a lot of money, and I'm trying to document what I'm doing right now. And hopefully one day things can take off and I can do this for a living. But in the meantime, I have a job, and it's not a lot. It doesn't pay a lot, but I'm just surviving. I'm finding other ways to try to make money. So you just have to experiment with yourself quite a lot. That's all I have for you today. I will see you all next time. If you're starting for productivity, I have a book on that, and I carefully use the lessons that I've learned from started my own studio when I was 18, and I think that will be of value to you. But yeah, see you all next time.